Are you considering homeschooling this year due to COVID and wondering whether it's worth it? That's what we're going to talk about today.
I was all alone, but then you came along.
Today we're going to look at the value of short-term homeschooling, going all in, and how to re-enter the school system with success. Let's start with the value of short-term homeschooling. Is it even worth it? I want to say yes, it is. You know, when I was growing up, my dad was in banking and my family moved all across the country. And sometimes we would live in places just for 1.5 or 2 years max. And sometimes we'd go from coast to coast in a move. And so I asked my mom later when I was older, I kind of said, Mom, how did you manage those extreme moves and so often? Like emotionally, was that difficult, making friends and knowing you were going to leave? Like, how did you do that? And I loved her advice, and I've actually used it in many ways in my life. But she said, wherever we went, I acted like we were going to live there forever. She said, so we planted deep roots. We joined a church. I made friends. I started a bridge club. We got involved in the community and we lived life to the fullest, and then we moved. And she said, it had great benefits. Not only did they live a life full of rich experiences, but today they have friends all across the country. You may ask, how does that relate to homeschooling? I think that philosophy is really powerful and beneficial that you need to consider if you're going to homeschool short-term. If you're going to homeschool short-term, go all in so that you can benefit from all the advantages that homeschooling has to offer. A lot of times when we do something short-term, and that was kind of what I was talking about with my mother, is that we tend to try to keep a foot in each camp, so to speak. So if you're thinking of short-term homeschooling, you might try too hard to emulate school at home that you would do at public school and try to keep with what your idea of that schedule is and not get the benefits from this particular time, the short-term time of homeschooling. Instead, what are those advantages and experiences that homeschooling offers, and jump fully in. And I'm going to tell you in a moment how it's not going to hurt you, your child, in re-entry. So jump fully in. And here are some of the ways, some of the advantages that you will get to experience this year that you wouldn't typically if you were in public or private school. 1, you get to set your own schedule. So think, how would that benefit our family? Teach 4 days. Take every other Friday off. You also get to have, it's less of a time commitment. Typical school day is 6 to 7 hours? In homeschooling, if you're in lower elementary, it's between an hour, 2 hours a day. Upper elementary, about 4. High school, 4 to 5 max on average. So use that extra time to do extra things. You have freedom in the content area you teach. So take advantage of that. You don't have to follow exactly what they're doing in the public school. If you're teaching reading, you get to choose the books and things that you want to use for reading. As you're writing, or if you're doing social studies or science, study the things that are interesting to you. You also have the freedom of the way you teach. School doesn't have to be on a screen. It doesn't have to be books, paper, tests. There are lots of ways to learn. So take this time and do that to the fullest. Think, what could we do this year? How could we learn in unique ways? Focus on your children's and family's needs. This is different than a typical year, right? Because everyone's at home and you're trying to keep up other schedules. But think about how would our family best benefit? Consider your child's learning weaknesses. Maybe this year you're thinking, she's a little behind in reading. I'm going to take the time to really strengthen her reading. Or maybe your student is advanced or ahead and they never get the opportunity to go beyond what the curriculum is. So you might say, we're going to go farther than a typical third grader math student goes. Also, consider your students' and families' emotional needs and spiritual well-being. I'm going to tell you a story from, I used to teach Sunday school, and one of my students was in 5th or 6th grade in elementary school here. And we were having Sunday school class, and he told me, he said, we had an assembly at the beginning of the year, and we were told about the dangerous things that we couldn't have at school. And in amongst things like weapons and drugs, they said the Bible. Now, my student said, that seemed, weird to me. How is the Bible dangerous? And so we had a discussion about it in Sunday school. But I just want to say, if you're a Christian, here's an opportunity for you to spend a year where you can strengthen your children's spiritual life. And that's a beautiful advantage. You also might have some emotional things that you need to work with your child. Such things as maybe they have a hard time controlling their anger, or maybe they need to work on respecting authority. Maybe they need to work on things like following rules. That's, a character strength, and it's actually another, you need that for if you get a job or whatever. You have to have those kinds of strengths and abilities, and maybe your student is suffering in some of those areas, and you could work on strengthening those skills. Or what about other character or executive functions? For example, you know what? I already talked about that. So that would be executive functions and character building. All right, but what about family relationships? What if you could take some time to help the siblings to get along better? Maybe you as a parent could strengthen your relationship with your children, or even strengthen your ability to parent. Typically, our lives are so hectic, and being able to take a year to sort of decompress, step back, and say, how could we live this year differently or this semester differently that would really benefit our family in these areas? That's a powerful gift. And you know what? It would help everything you do going forward, right? It would go right back into the school system. You would have these tools and this time that you've taken to develop them and strengthen your family unit and their learning ability, and they would re-enter with strength. Okay, but now how do you re-enter? Let's talk about setting yourself up for success for re-entering. If your student is an elementary age student, re-entering or transitioning back to public school is really quite simple, and there should be no problem for them to be right on grade level. If there was any subject that I might consider using from the public school for that 1 year, might be the Common Core math, because in your math curriculums, grade level, they're going to pretty much do the same skills. The only difference might be their approach to how they solve a particular math problem. I don't think you'd have a problem doing another curriculum, but if you kind of wanted to stay with what they were going to go back into, that might be an area to consider, because math is the only subject that really is cumulative, and it builds concept upon concept. But everything else, you can pretty much teach what you want, and they should transition back just fine. But what if you have a high school student? Now, this is an area that is a little bit more tricky and something you need to think about, but there is a way to set yourself up for success. So in high school, we have what we call credits. And in order to get a credit, you have to have certain requirements that consider a subject a credit. And so if I were going to homeschool for short term with a plan of going back in, I would absolutely go to my high school, talk with the principal, the guidance counselor, and if there's a curriculum specialist or any other administrative person that would matter, and I would go with that, talk with them and tell them what I was planning on doing and ask them how I could make sure that my student could re-enter and get credit for what we did at home. And the reason is because you're not guaranteed, if you're a homeschooler, you're not guaranteed automatically that what you do at home, if you transition into high school, you will get credit for. And here's why. Most school districts have their own policies for students transferring between the different school systems. And the high school is not required to accept credits from a non-accredited school. And that includes private schools and homeschools. So a non-accredited private school, they don't have to accept those credits. They're not kept from keeping those credits. Like if they want to, they can, but they don't have to. And so that's important to keep in mind. And, they might require things like standardized tests to prove that the content is equivalent to what they teach. They might want specific content taught, or they may have their own placement tests. Some schools might only be willing to accept a certain amount of credits. So you need to know what your school district requires upfront. And the easy way is talk to those administrators and get their input, and then do what they say so that you can go back in. And it's interesting because I just had a conversation with a parent about this. She is homeschooling her students this year, her daughter who's in the 10th grade, and she was concerned about credits. And so she did that, and I'm going to read to you exactly what she said because I took it down so you can know. She said, "I've been told that as long as I keep and show a record of courses completed at home, that they will give my daughter credit for each course for 10th grade. We have planned for all 8 that she was scheduled for in the fall, so that means she will get credit for all 8. I'm keeping good records, and I'm getting this approval in writing." And that's what I would do. If you have a high school student, work with your administrators. I really believe, we're in an unusual circumstance, and the school system will want to work with you because they're concerned about their students, and they want everybody to be covered this year, and so that when we get back to normal, everybody can transition comfortably. So I think that if you have those conversations, it'll set you up for success. And honestly, if I even had elementary children, I would do the same thing. I would talk to the principal because I think it's important that we have these strong relationships between everybody that is concerned about our child's well-being. In closing, I hope you see that it's definitely worth it even to homeschool for a short time. And we at thehomeeducatedmind.com are here to help you. Check out my book, Yes You Can Homeschool, The Terrified Parent's Companion to Homeschool Success. Check our self-paced online parent equipping course. We have a virtual community for parents where we share ideas and resources. Continue watching our channel. And also, I do personal consulting and even homeschool help tutor students. So I hope that you'll look to us as a resource. And I'm trusting that this is going to be an exceptional year that will have long-lasting memories and wonderful experiences for your family to build on for success. I trust you found this information helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback or favorite takeaway in the comments below. And of course, we appreciate every like, and be sure to subscribe so you can be notified as we make new content. And until then, thanks for watching, and remember, yes, you can homeschool.